right now, as you're watching this, you've probably looked at the time of this video and have subconsciously or consciously thought to yourself, do I want to watch the rest of this video? You've probably asked yourself, what do I have to do that is going to be more beneficial than this video? Maybe you don't realize that you're thinking it, but you are already having a desire to scroll on to the next thing. This feeling is very fitting for this week's episode, and that is discipline. These very feelings are exactly what work against discipline. My name is Caleb.
And I'm Jenny.
And this is Begin Again. And stories rooted in transformation. And so this week, if you haven't guessed it, we're going to be talking about discipline. And so before we get into discipline, I want to preface some things that we talked about last week, because I think it really continues to set the tone and serves as a building block for what we're going to talk about this week. And so last week we talked about purpose and what is purpose and how purpose serve as the roots for our journey of transformation. And so I want to say this, Jenny. I want to say this. Discipline is incentivized by purpose. So purpose is actively the very thing that enhances this idea of discipline.
Right.
And without purpose, again, because we said purpose is the roots, discipline becomes a very, very, very difficult thing to practice.
Right.
So I think that's something that's very important to touch on.
Absolutely.
I also think, with that being said, that it's very important to say this. And I think that somebody out there needs to hear this today. And that is, the reality of discipline is that it isn't a feeling. Discipline is an art. And there are a lot of other feelings that work against this art. Discipline, in some regards, can actually get lost in this idea of emotion.
Yeah.
And so I want to touch on this more. For this reason, discipline is hard. Discipline is hard because the practice of discipline is embracing suffering.
Yeah.
Discipline will never be instant gratification. In fact, discipline will never even produce desired results. It is only there to get you through suffering and lack of desire. It will always be hard. You just learn how to accept hard easier.
Becomes your new norm.
It does, exactly. Discipline allows for you to redefine what is easy.
Right.
It gives you the opportunity to define what is easy, but discipline doesn't make things easier. Discipline doesn't serve as something. Discipline itself, its characteristics are not defined by making things easier. It just teaches you how to get through hard things.
Absolutely.
And so discipline is something that you constantly have to strengthen. Another thing that discipline does is it allows for us to remain humble. It allows for us to accept struggle. It creates this ability to remain in the present and accept the hard and difficult things. Discipline removes emotion, and that includes our ego. Somebody out there needs to hear this. And so I'm going to say this again. Discipline allows for us to remain in the present. It allows for us to accept the hard and difficult things And it removes emotion out of the equation, and that includes our ego. Confidence, without the active practice of discipline, is rooted in narcissism. Because discipline is struggle.
Right.
Discipline proves a standard that you have set for yourself. And discipline actively allows for you to remember the difficulties that it took for you to overcome something. And so therefore, discipline has to be the absence of emotion. Discipline has to be the absence of ego. Discipline forces you to recognize struggle. It forces you to recognize that things are difficult. It requires for you to step beyond your comfort so that you can practice discipline. But we'll get into the science of it later. We'll get into the science of why in a minute. But I want to hear your thoughts on discipline. That's, to me, kind of what discipline is. So just to recap all that, because I know it was a lot. Discipline is an art. Discipline requires the removal of emotion, the removal of ego. Discipline is hard. And the reality of discipline is that it is only there to help you embrace suffering. Discipline is only there because it teaches you how to accept hard things. And it teaches you how to embrace hard things easier.
So Caleb, I want to touch on some of your points and keep talking about what discipline looks like to me. I think that a lot more people would be successful if we stop looking at discipline with a restrictive mindset, right? So maybe if we focus more on its direction and purpose, we would see more success. We would eventually see those results that we're constantly striving to get, you know? So discipline, it's not about doing more, okay? If you are constantly feeling busy, you're always busy, you're always, doing a lot, but you feel like overwhelmed. It's probably because there's a lack of direction, or there's a lack of purpose, or a lack of clarity, okay? It's more about making sure that we create habits that truly matter. It's about being effective with our time, with our choices, okay? So I'm actually still reading this guy right here.
It's a great book.
Yeah. I'm still in the beginning, but I recently started also listening to the audio book while I'm reading it, because I feel like I retain more information that way if I'm listening and, reading the words. So James Clear said it best in his book, Atomic Habits. Habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. In other words, small habits, they make a big difference. So I'm going to use an example of my abuela. Abuela means grandmother, for those of us that don't speak Spanish. So this is my abuela on my dad's side. She came from Cuba in the year 1960. Long time ago.
Yeah.
So she was fleeing from, at the time, the Castro regime that took over Cuba. And at the time, her father was a very highly ranked military officer in Batista was the president before Castro, in Batista's regime. And he sent her to New York City. I don't remember now how much money, but I don't think that it was much. But basically she went to New York with whatever she had in her pocket. She went by herself. I want to say she was either 20 or 21 maybe. She was very young when she came. And again, she came by herself. She came with no family, no support.
Wow.
And she also went in the winter. So just think about this young woman leaving this island, right? That's all she's ever known.
Wow.
And she's going to go experience the cruel winter of New York.
New York. She's going to experience New York, and then she's going to experience the cruel winter of New York.
Yeah, all by herself.
Those are two battles.
So she, she didn't have a degree. She didn't speak English. So she basically just had to take whatever job, whoever would take her. Mm-hmm. And so she ended up finding a housekeeping job at a hotel. And at the time, she was making 75 cents an hour, right?
Wow.
And if I'm not mistaken, that was the minimum wage at the time, or maybe a little earlier, before like 1955, around there, it was the minimum wage. So I did, I looked up what that would look like in today's time with inflation, and that is $6.20 an hour in 2026.
Wow.
Yeah. So less than minimum wage, less than the federal minimum wage. So even with such little funds, she would always instill that, even if you could only save $5 every paycheck, because that's what she did, even if it was just $5, she would save her $5 every paycheck, and she would put it in her bank account. She had a separate savings account, that accrued interest. And she would tell me, it doesn't matter if it's $1, it doesn't matter if it's $5, it doesn't matter if it's $10. Whatever you can do, those tiny little habits, eventually they're going to make a really big difference. And she did that for a long time. And let me tell you that those little choices, those small habits, they made a big difference, because when she passed away in 2024, she had left my aunt and my uncle with over $1 million in assets.
Wow.
Yeah. And at the time, I'm sure that she was seeing no end. She was frustrated because she's like, oh my goodness, I'm here by myself. She lived in she would talk about all the time, she lived in like a rat infested, cockroach infested studio in New York City. And eventually, she got married. She had my father in New York, and that's where they lived. All three of them shared a studio apartment, and she was still a housekeeper, and she still put money away every single paycheck.
Wow.
And it paid off.
Yeah.
Eventually it paid off. So I say all that to say that do not be discouraged with, where you are currently, okay? You have to make sure that you understand that these small choices that you make every single day, these 1% choices that you make every single day, they're going to compound eventually. And then a year from now, you're going to look back and you're going to be like, wow, I'm glad I made those small changes every day, because they made a really big difference.
Yeah.
A year from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And then eventually in your will, you're going to have over $1 million in assets. And that's just the financial aspect. We could talk about this when it comes to, our health, weight, losing weight. We can talk about it. There's so many aspects that we can apply discipline to.
And I want to go back to the book, and then I want to talk about your grandmother, because I think there's some good things there. Atomic Habits, I don't know if you've gotten to this part of the book yet or not, so I'm sorry if you haven't. I'm pretty sure you have, though, because he goes through it each chapter. A lot of what James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits is visualizing these disciplines. So check boxes, writing down like your small things and plus and minus to give yourself feedback on whether or not you've performed the task well or not. Visualizing these disciplines. And I think he does this for one reason. He doesn't state like the purpose or the science behind why he does this, but visualizing disciplines are quite important because it helps you remember when you have become successful, when you have recognized growth,
Yep.
because growth is only recognizable over time. You're not gonna notice your 1%. That's the hard thing about discipline. That's
Right.
what it goes back to what I was saying, like why one of the reasons why discipline is so hard is because it only teaches you how to embrace suffering or gives you strategies for how to overcome suffering better.
Absolutely.
You don't see growth in your 1% on a daily basis.
Right.
Progress pictures, for example, when it comes to physical, like your physical transformations
Yeah.
are important because daily you're getting after it, but you don't finish a workout and then go into the mirror and are like, oh yeah, I see the results of that workout.
Yeah.
You don't do that, Like that's why you have to take a picture, wait a month, take another picture, and then look back at it and say, oh, there's the growth right there. Discipline is that 1%.
Yeah.
And that's why discipline is so hard. And I think we're kind of saying the same thing here is because those 1% things are the things that you don't see. Discipline is something that you do not see. That's the reality. You're never going to see discipline. You're never going to see discipline. Discipline is just going to allow for that end result to be obtainable.
Exactly.
But discipline kind of leaves you, or you kind of leave discipline every interval, if that makes sense. So discipline pushes you, but discipline isn't present in the result.
Right.
Discipline pushes you, but it's not present in the result. It only helps you get to the result.
Right, exactly.
And so going back to your grandmother, I was just thinking. I'm like, she came to New York and I guarantee you she suffered.
Oh, yeah.
I guarantee it.
She talked a lot about there were times where she didn't have money to feed herself. And so she would eat, like, let's say, when she was cleaning a room and there was like leftover food or something like that, she would eat the food from, someone's room.
Wow.
Yeah.
What would lack of discipline look like for her? Can I ask this question? Did she have a choice?
Well, she made it so that there was no other choice other than
Discipline.
to be disciplined.
Right. Her life did not allow for her to do anything other than discipline, because if she didn't choose discipline, what would have happened? Who knows?
Who knows?
But she wouldn't have had $1 million to give her family.
Yeah.
But doesn't that mean purpose incentivizes discipline?
Absolutely.
Right? So
And I don't know exactly what her purpose was, but it's obvious that she had a purpose.
Yeah.
She left her entire family behind in Cuba.
yeah.
She left everything that she knew back in Cuba so that she could come to the United States and make it and be successful.
Yeah. That's great. And I think her ability to be disciplined stemmed from the fact that she had to face hard things. So that's awesome.
And she chose to endure them.
She did.
Yeah.
And that's discipline.
Right.
You want to talk about how she was able to do that, though?
Yeah.
Let's do it. I get excited about this.
I know you do.
I get so excited about
And
this.
you always lose me, and I'm like, okay, all right, like, focus, Jenny, focus.
So I'm sorry if that happens here. I get really fired up. Anytime I'm given, sometimes I even look for it. So sometimes I'm sitting in a conversation. You'll know what I'm referring to in a second. But sometimes I'm like sitting in a conversation and I'm like, okay, how can I fit or implement neuroscience into this? How can I fit, because I get excited about talking about these things. And so let's talk about the why and the how and the what of discipline, what it looks like from a science perspective. I know I said that discipline is an art, but discipline is also a science. And I'm about to explain why. So, let's talk motivation. Motivation is a futuristic theory. I might even venture to say a myth. It's a fantasy. Motivation is a futuristic fantasy because motivation stops the second a task becomes hard. In fact, our brains are literally conditioned to survive in this regard. Motivation teaches us what's next. In fact, motivation gets you started. It's natural. It's so natural that there is literally a neurotransmitter that is dedicated to this idea. The only thing that is dedicated to discipline is a muscle that has to constantly be worked out. And that is something that we like to call the anterior mid-cingulate cortex.
I have heard about this. I don't even think that I can repeat the word. So you have an abbreviation for it?
I do.
What is it?
The AMCC.
Yeah, I've heard about the AMCC for going on maybe like a month now. And let me tell you that it took me a long time to grasp how important it is. But Caleb is so passionate about the AMCC.
It's great.
So seriously, pay attention here because it's important.
So, let's go over the AMCC. I have a lot written down about it. So, I'm going to scan my notes. I'm going to be looking a lot because this is the organized version of a million things that I could say, but I had to really confine it. So anyway, here we go. The anterior mid-cingulate cortex. This is a region in the brain and is the part of the brain that is essential for motivation, willpower, and perseverance in a person. It integrates a multitude of different signals to help tackle challenging tasks. This part of the brain evaluates reward versus effort. It manages internal body states, and it controls attention and the ability to initiate goal-directed action.
Okay.
Before I continue to go over the AMCC, I now want to transition, because it's going to set the tone, for how the AMCC is strengthened. Ready? And this is a concept called neuroplasticity. So, neuroplasticity is the brain's lifelong ability. This is actually, they say neuroplasticity is the sole reason why human beings were able to evolutionize, because of this concept right here. So neuroplasticity is the lifelong ability of the brain to reorganize and completely restructure functions and neural connections in response to learning or difficulties.
So is it what helps us adapt?
Exactly.
Okay.
This is the basis for what we like to call in the science world homeostasis.
Okay.
Yeah. Our ability to adapt.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. The thing about the AMCC is that it can only be strengthened when things outside of bodily function are performed. So in other words, when we are doing things that are harder than what we are currently capable of doing, that is when neuroplasticity takes place, precedent. That is when our AMCC is strengthened. Why? Because this triggers the AMCC and helps for the mind to grow stronger so that comfort is redefined and growth can take place.
So does the AMCC ever become tolerant of a task and then it has to readjust because that task is maybe no longer difficult for us?
I'm going to say this,
Okay.
and maybe this will help a little bit. This part of the brain is what is crucial for defining what difficulty means.
Okay.
It is the hub for discipline and willpower. So in other words, the art of discipline essentially paints a canvas with our neurotransmitters. The AMCC and the prefrontal cortex, they work well together. And so the prefrontal cortex is the rational part of the brain.
Okay.
It's what takes information, or it's what interprets information, takes neurotransmitters and organizes them and distributes them so that we can be rational.
Okay.
So, the art of discipline paints a canvas with neurotransmitters using the prefrontal cortex to balance the distribution of transmitters in order to overcome the difficult task. So, dopamine, that is the neurotransmitter for motivation.
Okay.
That is the neurotransmitter that says, what's next? What's next? What's next? A lot of people associate dopamine with happiness. Mm-hmm. It's not that. In fact, it's the opposite. It's excitement. It's impatience.
Okay.
It's
like impulsivity.
it's very impulsive.
Okay.
People with ADHD have a heightened like production of dopamine. And so that's why, like, if you have ADHD, I'm sure you can relate to this a little bit. That's why finishing things are so hard.
Yeah.
Because right when you're about to finish, it's like, oh, forget it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Next.
And then we get excited about the next project.
Yeah, and then you get excited about the next project.
I say we because Caleb more so than myself struggles with that.
Yeah.
But I definitely do. I get really excited about one project, and then that dopamine dies down, and then I'm not excited anymore, and I'm like, forget it. Okay. Oh, I get really excited about the next one.
Yep.
And then it's just like this constant, vicious cycle of never finishing anything.
Yep. And so that is literally dopamine.
Yeah.
How natural does it feel, though? It feels very natural.
Yeah.
Right? To say, okay, I'm almost done. What's next?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm almost done. What's next? Okay, I'm almost done. What's next? Like I said, motivation is an emotion.
Yeah.
It is so natural that we literally have a neurotransmitter dedicated to it. Serotonin, this is happiness. In fact, it's quite the opposite of dopamine. Serotonin is happiness, it's contentment, it's what we like to call the here and now transmitter.
So it's more steady.
It promotes embracement.
Okay.
So, again, too much serotonin makes a person feel unmotivated. In fact, marijuana produces a... See, I'm going off on a tangent here.
It's okay,
but
finish
I'm
it.
gonna make a full
Yeah.
circle moment here.
Yeah.
Let's be a full circle moment.
Because someone could be relating to this.
This is true. But marijuana, it produces at an unnatural rate something in our brains called our endocannabinoids. And it triggers the R1 receptor or the S1 receptor or something like that. Basically, what it does is in our synapses, our neurotransmitters, they're firing at like, just me talking right now, my neurotransmitters are, and it's all flowing through my brain. The reason why I'm so happy right now is because I'm talking about something that I love, and that's my neurotransmitters going. But anyway, so what it does is these endocannabinoids, they get trapped in your synapses, and it basically heightens that feeling of contentment. And so people who smoke weed and like smoke marijuana and stuff, the reason why they're so like, dude, like that, like the, I don't want to do anything. I just want to sit here. Life is great. Like that. That's because your serotonin is being heightened because serotonin and endocannabinoids, they work very much alongside each other.
Interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, full circle moment here. I said I was going to make it.
Bring it back.
I'm going to land the plane. Discipline. So I wanted to paint this canvas. That's what I'm going to talk about here. This is when I say the art of discipline paints a canvas with neurotransmitters. Because what it does is it teaches the brain how to use dopamine and serotonin in a balanced way through the anterior mid-cingulate cortex so that we can get through things like suffering and difficult tasks much easier. It teaches us how to work against our natural state of motivation so that we can understand what it means to actively work through suffering. And so I said this last night. I said, the least disciplined people also come across as the most unmotivated people.
Yeah,
I said that.
you did.
But I would venture to say, now that I'm thinking about it, the least unmotivated people come across as the least disciplined. Again, people who, and I'm not hating on people who smoke weed, but this is the reality. This is the science. When a person who is regularly smoking weed has unnatural levels, so we call it I'm drawing a blank. We'll just use the word unnatural because I can't think of the word right now. Oh, synthesized. When there are synthesized transmitters being produced through drug enhancers, when you come off of them, the lack of desire is overwhelming. This is why you see a lot of people who partake in these things feel a little bit unmotivated, or this can be a tendency. I'm not saying it's this way for everybody,
Right.
but a lot of people present these patterns, and this is why, because it actively teaches you how to not be motivated because it says, I'm going to do it for you, or it teaches you how to actually not be disciplined because it says, oh, we don't need that. There's not a balance, and so discipline teaches you how to balance these neurotransmitters on a scientific level. Again, neuroplastically, I don't even know if that's a word, but I think you kind of get what I'm saying. It neuroplastically teaches the anterior mid-cingulate cortex how to take over. Now, if you stop practicing discipline, it's going to shrink. So it can grow and it can shrink.
Okay.
So neuroplasticity is, discipline is essentially an exercise, and neuroplasticity is the definition of muscle growth. And so you constantly have to be exercising through discipline in order to grow this muscle.
So the AMCC will shrink if you're not practicing discipline.
It will.
It will.
It will.
Okay. So we can venture to say that it's almost dangerous if we don't practice self-discipline.
It's detrimental to the process of transformation because we said that transformation is actively seeking hard things,
Right.
so that you can redefine comfort so that you can grow. And discipline promotes growth because it teaches you how to work through the struggle. And so I want to say this, and I want to tell a story to kind of help people understand a real life example of this process. And so I'll talk about it a couple times, probably more than that. One of my desires is to run a marathon. And I'm not a runner, I promise. But going back to Atomic Habits, one of the things that James Clear talks about is identifying as the very thing that you wish to accomplish. So if you want to run a marathon, you're not training for a marathon, you're a runner. And that helps get you in the right headspace to just say, well, running can be hard, but I'm a runner, so that's just a part of it. But anyway, I was training for a marathon, and I hate running. It's actually something that I really despise. I don't like it at all. But I learned how to embrace the suffering of running. And so one thing that I would do is I'd put my music in because music was something that was comfortable for me when I was running. And so I decided I was going to stop listening to music. Because I wanted to really grasp what it means to completely embrace suffering. I knew that if I wanted to grow my anterior mid-cingulate cortex to allow for me to overcome difficult tasks, then what I was going to have to do was to remove the very thing that was comfortable for me to make running easier so that I could just embrace the suffering of running
Sure.
in its fullest effect. And so that to me, well, not to me, that is literally the science of discipline. So I'm going to give a recap really fast because I know it was a lot. The anterior midcingulate cortex is the part of the brain that is needed for willpower. It's the hub for discipline, and it promotes perseverance. The only way to strengthen that is to do things outside of what you're comfortable doing, is to do things that are difficult so that neuroplasticity can take over and grow this muscle so that enduring suffering becomes easier. That is the science behind discipline.
So Caleb, let's talk about that AMCC and how it shrinks when there's a lack of discipline. Let's talk about the other side of the 1%.
Let's do it.
Okay. So, someone out here, I want you to think about this. Okay. I want you to ask yourself this.
Really tune in here. Let's really pay attention to this because I feel like this is a really good point.
So I want you to ask yourself this. Are you the 1% or are you the other percent? Okay. And so James Clear talks about making 1% decisions every single day, 1% habits every single day that are going to eventually get us to the outcome that we want. But on the other side, on the flip side, okay, if we repeat 1% errors daily, eventually it's going to accumulate into many missteps. And that is going to be the opposite of the outcome that we want. Okay? I think a lot of people struggle with, and including myself, that the slow pace of transformation makes it easy to let a habit slide.
Ooh, that's real good. So you're saying transformation is a longevity.
Absolutely.
It's not instant gratification.
Not at all. Not at all. And we talked about that in our last couple episodes about dying to yourself, right? Choosing the hard, pruning yourself so that we can get to our outcome. So that we can live our purpose out. Okay? So, James Clear also talks about what really matters is your trajectory, okay? Not your current results. It's your trajectory. So I'm going to use this silly example because I recently picked up golf, okay? And I'm atrocious. Atrocious. That's probably not even the best word to describe it, but I just get so stinking frustrated. And I'm sure that as a golfer yourself, you can revel in the same feelings as me.
Yeah. I won't lie. Like, the thing about golf, though, is that it's such, like, a relevant thing. Like, you're good on the basis of who you play with.
Oh.
But it doesn't help that, like, the better you get at it, the more frustrated you get.
Yeah, I think so.
So, for those who play golf with me, let's stay quiet in the comment section. Because we'll just leave it there.
So
I do get frustrated. I get stinking frustrated, just like you said.
Oh yeah. It's just, and it's crazy because I actually was on the range one day and I was out there just swinging away, and I became audibly frustrated. This older gentleman came over to me, real sweet guy, and he gave me some pointers, and he just told me, listen, even the best, or even myself that I've been golfing for 20 something years, I still get frustrated, okay? But you have to make sure that you focus on your current trajectory. So your current little habits, your current choices, eventually you're going to get the results. Okay. So he's like, he he gave me some tips. He talked to me about some technique, my shoulders, my elbow, about, when I make contact. He gave me some good pointers. Now, when the weather's warm, I'm going to go back out there. And actually, Caleb and I haven't gone golfing together, but we're going to make it happen before the end of the semester.
Okay, if you get as frustrated as I get, we're going to get kicked off the golf course.
It's very possible. But considering that there's only one golf course in Campbellsville, let's not do that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's just not going to... Well, there is one down...
No,
I
don't want to drive that far. Everything's far around here. But I want to go back to the point that you're making. The silly little golf example. A point that was made in the beginning. Discipline removes emotion, and that includes our ego.
Yeah.
So, all the way down to our frustrations, would you say that frustration is the lack of ability to endure suffering?
I wouldn't use the word that I wouldn't say that it's the lack of, okay? I do think that it can derail us. But yeah, I mean, you are putting emotion into the equation, and we did say that our emotions should not be a factor.
In fact, our emotions work against.
They do. They work against, yeah.
Because discipline is outside the realm of emotion.
Which is what motivation is.
Which is what is emotional. There's
emotional.
a lot of emotion.
It's a lot of emotion.
Happiness, excitement.
Right.
But discipline is like when all that stuff is gone and you're frustrated.
Yeah.
Discipline teaches you how to overcome that suffering.
Right, exactly.
Because frustration is suffering.
Exactly.
Frustration is, in a weird way, frustration is a part of motivation. Because it is the lack of motivation.
Yeah.
And so your body is working. Your body's response to lack of motivation is what? Frustration.
Exactly.
And so discipline teaches you how to work outside of all of that.
Absolutely. I think that while we were going over our notes in the beginning, we had talked about, and I knew you were gonna talk about this, but we had touched upon. We said we were gonna touch upon Paul again. Mm-hmm. Did you want to do that?
Yeah, but I want to say this first to go over what you're saying about the lack of. Mm-hmm. I want to give a little bit of tough love right now. And I'm not saying this is guaranteed. I'm not saying that. But I want to say this. The reality about discipline is that it is a self-discovery that a lot of people will never encounter. Not because it's not available, because everyone has access to it. But few will truly discover it because it requires a person to consistently do a hard task every single day. Discipline is a difficult decision that you will be faced to make every single time. I'll say it one more time. The reality of discipline is that some people will never discover it. Not because it's not available, because everybody has access to it, but because it requires you to make a decision on a daily basis when it comes to facing difficult things. And so everybody can practice the art of discipline, but we have to first recognize that discipline has nothing to do with the result, but has everything to do with the ability to endure suffering easier.
Very good point.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, you mean touch on Paul?
I think so.
Okay. For those of you who tuned in last week, we touched on 1 Corinthians 9:19. Thank you to the person who held me accountable in the comments section. Much needed. Seriously though, if any of you were on Instagram and saw that comment, I want to make something very clear. I appreciate that. A lot of what the Bible talks about is brotherhood, holding one another accountable, and ironing clothes. No, iron sharpens iron. The Bible talks about iron sharpens iron, and so when somebody challenges a thought, when somebody challenges a point that is being made, first of all, I have no shame in admitting that I was wrong. I'm not saying I'm wrong in this situation, but I'm saying in general, I have no shame in admitting I was wrong. And so if ever I'm wrong and somebody calls me out for it, I'm thankful for that. If somebody wants to challenge my thought, I'm thankful for that because it forces me to get better. It continues to sharpen me.
Yeah.
That honestly can go back to discipline. Because accountability is discipline.
For sure.
Accountability enhances discipline, I should say. So, for the guy who commented, thank you. I'm actually very appreciative of that. And he actually challenged me. He told me that there was better examples of purpose and name change. And so it forced me to do some research on Peter, on Abraham, there was one more, but I can't remember it. It's okay. There was 3 of them that he gave me examples for, and I did my research and I got to learn a little bit more about it. I get chills because I grew because of that. So thank you. Anyway, sorry, I had to go on that little tangent. Let's talk about Paul. Sorry for the guy who's watching, but I think you'll like this example better. So in 9:19, he talks about this. He talks about winning the more. We talked about that last week. He says, to the Jews, I became a Jew that I might win Jews. To those who are under the law, as under the law, that I might win those who are under the law. To those who are without law, as without law, that I might win those who are without law. To the weak, I became weak, as that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all men that I might by means save some. Now, this I do for the gospel's sake, that I may be partaker of it with you. Then he says this, and this is the part of discipline. I need to read all this so that I can make the point. Do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may obtain it. And everyone who competes for the prize is temperate in all things. Now, they do it to obtain a perishable crown, but we for an imperishable crown. Therefore, I run thus, not with uncertainty. Thus I fight, not as one who beats the air, but I discipline my body and bring it into subjection, lest when I preach to others, I myself should become disqualified. What this is saying is that before he can even go out and serve out his purpose, the first thing that he has to do is discipline his body so much so that it is unbreakable.
Yeah.
That when he has to endure suffering, that when he has to endure temptation, that he might be so disciplined that his character will not be compromised by the people that he has to go out and reach.
And you said that there were some versions that were...
Oh man, it's rough.
Where he talks about choosing physical pain.
He talks about, in this analogy, what he's referring to is boxing. In some translation, it talks about boxing. And So what he is talking about is like this idea of breaking his body down like a boxer. And basically saying like the process of discipline is suffering. Discipline and suffering in Paul's definition is interchangeable. Discipline is suffering, suffering is discipline.
Okay.
But both are needed in order to strengthen yourself so that you can overcome certain things. In this case, the temptations of other people. And so we can take a snippet from Paul's idea of discipline and say that the reality of practicing discipline is hard. The reality of practicing discipline is, like we said, easy, like we said earlier, is the idea of making suffering a little bit easier. Strategically saying, how am I going to endure suffering? Discipline allows for difficult tasks to become easier because we learn how to endure suffering better.
Right.
So Paul's idea of discipline is to literally break yourself down, embrace suffering. I would venture to say, look for suffering so that you can grow. And I think that aligns with the science that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway.
Thank you for sharing that. I just felt, I don't know. I just felt Paul.
Paul was very disciplined.
Yeah, and actually, I don't think that we really planned to talk about this. It was just something that we talked about, Caleb and I, before we started filming. And I don't know, I just felt the Lord put it on my heart. I was like, Caleb, we got to talk about it.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
So, we talked about in our first episode about having 5 pillars of transformation, right?
Yeah.
I want to talk about 5 pillars to self-discipline. And these are actually called the 5 C's. And it's this framework that actually a lot of child psychologists will use. We're speaking your language, aren't we? But it's been, so it's not exactly the same as the 5 C's that they use in child psychology, but it was a framework that was slightly adapted to the art of discipline.
So where did you learn this?
Her name is, I cannot remember her last name. I'm going to look for it, but her name is Deb something, and she is a psychologist. So.
But you had mentioned something about undergrad.
Oh, well, yeah, that's where the thought came up first. So, hey, we're using the undergrad degree.
Crazy.
Again. I know.
That's crazy.
But I cannot remember her full name. I'm going to look for it, though.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk about the 5 C's. The first one is clarity, okay? So we need to make sure that that there is intention, okay, with our choices, okay? We talked about when a tree is pruned, right? Mm-hmm. The reason for it is because if there are numerous shoots, that means there's numerous energy going to all these different things, all these different distractions that don't really matter. Mm-hmm. And so the energy isn't able to be, it's not able to be given to, a select few shoots, therefore not being able to bear quality fruit. So we need to make sure that we are taking away all the outside distractions. We have to be clear in what our purpose is, okay? What our outcome, what we want our outcome to be. And everything outside of that, all those shiny distractions, get rid of them. Okay? The next C is commitment. So you have to make a choice to keep going even when motivation dies. Okay? Even when it's not exciting anymore, we have to stay committed. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my struggle yesterday. So I kind of shut Caleb out yesterday because I just was not in the right headspace. And he kept asking me, like, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? And I was like, nothing. I'm fine. Whatever, right? But I'll talk about it a little bit now.
The Lord has blessed me with the gift of intuition. And this is why I'm going to be a counselor.
So my tears didn't give it away?
Oh, I feel like the tears came after I said, Jenny, what's wrong? And then you said nothing. I said, something's wrong. And then you said nothing. And I said, okay, fine. I get to work. I look up. There's tears. I'm like, Jenny.
Oh, by the way, my tears are at least, they're definitely a weekly occurrence. And Caleb gets to experience them at least once or twice a week. Yeah.
It's okay.
But anyways, so I was struggling with these thoughts about being a phony, right? And like just struggling with like why are we doing this? Why do people want to listen to me? Why do they care what I have to say? And frustrated with the fact that Caleb is so good at thinking on the fly and I'm not. I have to prepare for like a week and it still doesn't even touch what he's saying. But anyways.
You know that gets me in trouble sometimes though. The type A, type B, like the fact that I'm type B, I'll get up and I'll be like, well, I think I'm going to do this today. And then I get in trouble for it, so.
Well, I do need to learn how to do that a little bit more because I think I can be really rigid. But anyways, let's
yeah,
not
we're
digress.
going down that, yeah.
Okay. He told me, Jen, why don't we just not film? Let's forget the podcast this week. And I was like, no, we are not doing that. That's not an option. You know, he was really trying to be supportive, so I appreciate that. But I said, that's not an option. You know, we committed to doing this. Therefore, we are going to do it. And sometimes through tears, I was saying this, like sometimes you have to do things even when you're not motivated.
It's true.
Okay?
Yep.
And honestly, this morning, even still today, I still am kind of feeling in a funk. And I don't know when I'm going to get out of it. But I want to let you guys know that I took motivation out of the equation and I stayed committed to our purpose.
That's right.
So I say that to say, like, I struggle too. You know, we're not here trying to preach holier than thou at all. Like, you obviously, you guys are seeing one 45-minute or hour clip, but you're not seeing how I struggle on the daily.
Mom, if you're watching this, we should get you on here to talk about the daily conversations about, I'm going to quit. I hate, like, the school is awful. Like, you know, it's, well, this is, why are they even making me do this? I have to write this every single week. And, you know, and so to Jenny's point, like, we're, you know, we have to practice discipline. We have to practice discipline ourselves.
You know, because if not, you know, we go back to that word phony. We're phonies if we're on here preaching discipline to you, but we're not trying to, you know, live that out.
Yeah.
So
Commitment.
Okay. So next C is consistency. So these are where the results are built. Okay. Progress does not come from grand gestures, but it comes from small, repeated motions, which is what Atomic Habits talks a lot about.
That's true.
Okay, that 1% better every day. And then compassion is the next pillar. This is our fourth pillar, okay? I also needed to give myself a little bit of compassion in that moment. That's not giving up, okay? It's choosing to go forward even after you fail.
Can I ask, is compassion rooted in the lack of judgment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
because, we need to understand that at the end of the day, we are humans.
Because it gives no room for failure.
Exactly.
And discipline will come with failure. Or failure will come with discipline, I mean.
Right. And that's what this pillar is talking about, You are going to fail. Make no mistake. You are definitely, not maybe, definitely.
What did we say? We said it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of how many times.
Yep. Okay? But show yourself some grace, okay? Show yourself some grace and keep going. And guess what? And that's where begin again comes in. Yeah. After you fail, okay?
Begin again.
Begin again. All right? And then our 5th pillar is control. So it's the ability to manage your impulses, attention, and time. Self-control really keeps you aligned with your purpose. That is why self-control is important. And there's actually a great example in the Bible about self-control. His name is Daniel. And actually, so I'm going to ask you if you can read Daniel, some snippets from Daniel 1 for me before I jump into his story. Okay. Can you do that for us?
Yeah. Get to Daniel real quick. Okay. Okay, so looks like we're going Daniel 1, 5 through 20.
Yeah, bear with us because Daniel 1 is pretty long, and so I circled just a few verses.
Do you want me to just read the verses or read all the way through 20?
Probably up to the verses because some of it I don't think is totally relevant.
Okay, so I'll just read
the ones I circled.
Okay.
Just make it flow.
Got it.
Sorry, that's a hard feat.
Here we go. And the king appointed for them a daily provision of the king's delicacies and of the wine which he drank, and 3 years of training for them, so that at the end of time they might serve before the king. And 8 reads, But Daniel proposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the chief of the eunuchs, that he might not defile himself. Now God had brought Daniel into the favor and goodwill of the chief of the eunuchs. And the chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who has appointed for food and drink. For why should he see your faces looking worse than the young men who are your age? Then you would endanger my head before the king. And then 12 reads, Please test your servants for 10 days. Wait, I'm going to read actually 11. So Daniel said, the steward from who the chief of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, Please test your servants for 10 days, and let them give us vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then let our appearance be examined before you, and the appearance of the young men who eat the portion of the king's delicacies. And as you see fit, so deal with your servants. So he consented with them in this matter and tested them 10 days. And at the end of 10 days, their features appeared better and fatter in flesh than all the young men who ate the portion of the king's delicacies. Thus the steward took away their portion of delicacies and the wine that they were to drink, and gave them vegetables. As for these 4 young men, God gave them knowledge and skill in all literature and wisdom. And Daniel said, understanding in all visions. And Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. And then 20 reads, And in all matters of wisdom and understanding about which the king examined them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers who were in all his realm.
Thank you. So I'm going to explain this a little bit, maybe in layman's terms, because I know that there are some words in here that, could be confusing. Okay. So Daniel was taken into Babylon. He was offered King Nebuchadnezzar's food and wine. Okay. And these meals were more of a representation or a symbol of privilege, success, and assimilation into Babylonian culture. All right.
Do we know the history of why Daniel was able to sit at that table?
Why? I was just thinking that. I'm like, darn, why was he taken into Babylon? I did not do the research on that. Okay. So if you are watching this and please leave us a comment. And I'll definitely make sure to look into that after.
Yeah.
So Daniel made a choice not to indulge, into the king's food. And he said, my friends and we are going to take a simple diet of water and vegetables for 10 days. And this is actually where the modern Daniel fast comes from. If you don't know what the Daniel fast is, in our modern world, it's been more adapted to eating fruits, vegetables, water. Some people will drink coffee, but it's just black coffee. And I know that there's a few other choices that you can also make, but you do that for 21 days. And obviously the purpose is to, become clear, get rid of some of that brain fog, gain more clarity from the Lord. Okay. So this was all about self-control and obedience. Okay. He knew that what he consumed, it wasn't just about physical. It was about the spiritual. He chose a restricted diet in a place of excess. And so many times in our world, there is excess.
Instant gratification.
Exactly. Okay. So he chose to stay away from that instant gratification. Okay. And how did he do that? It required discipline. It required discipline, and it meant saying no to comfort. It meant saying no to pressure and to cultural expectations at the time, more like now it would be more societal expectations, right? So that could be social media. I think a lot of times we what we call doom scroll, right? And we compare ourselves to other people on social media. There's an excess of just so many things that we need to cut out in order to stay disciplined.
Yeah, I heard somebody say if people approve every single thing you do, it's time to check yourself.
Yep.
I want to say that so far what it sounds like is Daniel has been consistent.
Yep.
He's been committed.
Yep.
And he's had self-control.
Yep.
So.
He has. So his choice to do this, it was rooted in conviction. He trusted God. He trusted that honoring God in the small daily choices would matter. And actually we see that in verse 17 and verse 20. So I'm going to have you read those in a moment. But we see why his choice was important, okay? So after this period, Daniel and his friends were found to be, can you go back to, I want to say it's 17 maybe? They were found to be what?
They were 14.
Try 17 maybe? Or
14.
Is it 14? Sorry, yeah.
So he consented with them in this matter and tested them 10 days. And at the end of the 10 days, their features appeared better and fatter in flesh than all the young men who ate the portions of the king's delicacies.
And then read 20 for us.
And in all matters of wisdom and understanding about which the king examined them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers who were in all his realm.
10 times better than all the people that succumbed to
Indulgence.
self-indulgence.
And
Okay?
instant gratification.
Exactly. So Daniel reminds us that self-control is not deprivation. So at the very beginning, we talked about that we needed to maybe change our outlook on discipline and don't think of it so much as a restrictive mindset. Okay? And Daniel's a great example of this. You know, he made sure that his discipline was aligned with his purpose. Discipline is more about what we practice privately, and those small habits that we practice privately shape the influence that we carry publicly. So, you also have a great example of discipline, and it's about another great man of the Bible, and his name is?
His name is Noah. And Noah was a man of discipline simply because of the weight of what he was being asked. And I'm not going to read an excerpt from the Bible. This is just my understanding of Noah. In Kentucky, there's this thing, it's called the Ark Encounter, or the
I want to say you're right.
the Ark Encounter. And it goes over the in depth. I don't have even a fraction of what's in that Noah encounter, or the Ark Encounter. I've been to it. It's unbelievable, especially the things that went into the Ark. And for 70, so it's between 50 and 100 years. But most theologians have kind of concluded, based on the life of his sons, that it took him about 75 years to build this. Every single day. And so remember I said that there's a person who had told me, and I can't remember, I wish so I could give them credit, who told me it, and it's, if everybody is approving the things that you're doing, it's time to check yourself. That is the epitome of Noah.
Yeah.
Noah was mocked. Noah was shunned. Noah was shamed. Noah was scrutinized, ridiculed, all those things, because of the earthly instant gratifications and indulgences that the people of that time were partaking in. They were like, "You're crazy. Oh, is your God coming today?" You know, I mean, I don't know if that's what they were actually telling him, but they were mocking him. But he was persistent. He stayed the course. The boat was these were the estimated measurements: 510 feet long, 40 feet wide, and 56 feet tall.
Wow.
Yeah. That is, so it was made completely out of wood. I was joking because I looked up how he built it, and some person put on the internet that the way that he built it was with power tools, chainsaws, and then they were talking just all like the modern day stuff, which obviously is not true.
Right.
The man didn't even have nails. So one of the things that they were explaining in the Ark Encounter, and this is something that stuck with me, was that every single piece of wood had to be hand cut and hand carved to fit into each other. And then they had to take the little, I don't know what they're called, but they're like nails, but they're not nails. They had to hand carve those out of wood so that they could hit them into the pieces of wood so that the wood would hold together.
Wow.
And they had to do that for a ship that was 510 feet long, 40 feet wide, and 56 feet tall, on the basis of faith. Which every single day probably meant suffering, because he was human at the end of the day. And there were probably days where he was working on that thing where he might have thought to himself, you know, what if? But I have to say this. His 75 years of doing it every single day tells me one thing. And that is, he remained steadfast. He took emotion out of the equation and said, I have to do this because this is what I'm being asked to do. So his purpose was his faith, which made discipline much easier. But at the end of the day, now that I'm thinking about it, he probably didn't question it. Because the reality is, emotion didn't matter in that moment of suffering. The only thing that mattered was his persistence and his perseverance to the end goal, which is to build this ship.
Right.
Because of his purpose. So,
does it say anywhere in that story if there was ever a moment of failure or I remember something with one of his sons. I want to say that one of Noah's sons could have possibly derailed from their purpose temporarily. Do you remember any of that?
I'm not certain.
Okay.
So I don't want to speak on something that I'm not certain of, but it wouldn't surprise me.
And that would have been failure.
Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if that is something that had taken place. I wish I had honestly paid attention more, but it's just so much in that arc encounter that like by floor 3 you're just like brain dead because there's so much. But maybe. Yeah.
But he definitely had 3 of the C's. He had commitment, he had clarity, and consistency.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, and self-control.
Oh, for sure.
So at least 4 of them. I was
sure.
trying to see if we had the 5th pillar, but
compassion doesn't.
Yeah, I don't know.
Didn't say anything about.
Yeah, I
compassion.
didn't say. Okay.
So, but yeah. So, I want to wrap this up. I feel like you guys are gonna hate us for. I know it's over 45 minutes at this point, but we were literally like, how are we going to fit discipline into 45 minutes?
Yeah.
It was inevitable. We weren't going to.
And actually, we even thought about making it a 2-parter, but
I'm excited for humbleness.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is our
I am
podcast.
too.
We kind of get to do what we
yeah.
want here. Okay, but to wrap it up, I want to reiterate this. And I want to say this because it's also going to allow for us to transition into next week. Remember that discipline allows for us to remain humble. It allows for us to accept struggle. It creates the ability to remain in the present and accept the hard and difficult things. It takes our pride out of failure. It takes our pride out of not being able to do something. Discipline removes emotion, and that includes ego. And that is something that we will for sure be covering next week when it comes to humbleness. So, we've come a long way. You guys are coming a long way, continuing to indulge in this journey of transformation. So, we've all come a long way, but we have a long way to go.
Yes, we do.
And so the road to transformation continues.
And we hope you'll join us next week.